joint naval and airstrikes against the Houthis conducted by the United States and the UK to protect trade in the Red Sea? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And from Oman and the Young Leaders Group, Hailana Al-Busaidi.
Good evening, everyone. I have one question for the panel. How does the CMF, which is a combined force of 47 nations commanded by the U.S. Navy, maintain its efforts in blocking the weaponizations of the Houthis?
Thank you very much. From the UK, John Chipman.
Yes, thank you. My question is to Admiral Sir Keith and also to Zaki Mohammed. A couple of years ago at this event, General Eric Kurilla, then the CENTCOM commander, placed great emphasis on new defense technologies in carrying out his mission here. So I wonder, what are the defense tech use cases that are most relevant to the provision of effective maritime security? Undersea, on sea, in the air, in space, robotics, sensors, enablers, AI-supported situation awareness. What would ease your task? What are the defense tech use cases? So perhaps you don't need to put a frigate over a cable, but put something a little bit more discreet that can even do more than a frigate can do.
Thank you very much, John. And from Lebanon, Agnes Hilou.
Agnes Hilou, Breaking Defense. My question is for the Admiral. So I want to ask about the NATO office in Kuwait. How does it enhance the security of the shipping lanes? And Mr. Shipman have preceded me to the second question. I was going to ask about the unmanned surface vessels, if they are already deployed in the Red Sea and the Arabian Gulf, and or underwater vessels. Thank you.
Thank you very much. From the Netherlands, Welle Nouwens.
Thank you, Bastian. My question was for Senior Minister of State of Singapore, Zaki Mohammed. Two questions for you, sir. First, how are you seeing hybrid threats as a tool of national power evolve in Asia, and what are your concerns around the trend lines there? And then secondly, I also had a question about new technology, particularly Singapore's next-gen maritime technology in terms of autonomous underwater vehicles and unmanned surface vessels. How can they help foster greater maritime security, not just in Asia, but also in this region, particularly if we think about the cross-regional security interlinkages, not least in the space of undersea cables? Thank you.
Thank you very much. From Egypt and the Young Leaders Group, Sarah Al-Manawi. Sarah.
Thank you, Your Excellencies, and good morning. I want to ask about a recent statement by the Egyptian Foreign Minister about the Red Sea security, and that it should be governed and only governed by states bordering the Red Sea through the Red Sea Council rather than any external security architecture. My question is, since maritime security is obviously a global concern, how do you think a balance should be struck so that sovereignty does not lead to isolation and responsibility does not lead to vulnerability? Thank you.
Thank you very much. There are a lot of people on the list. I might take 3 or 4 more before we get a set of responses in. Robert Ward.
Thank you, Bastian. A question for Senior Minister of State Zaki Mohammed, if I may. Japan's new Prime Minister is already taking a highly proactive position on building out the country's defense and deterrence capabilities and plans to revise Japan's national security strategy next year. Given this, if you were able to speak to her now, what would you ask Japan to do more of to help support maritime security in the Indo-Pacific and beyond?
Thank you very much. From Indonesia, Maxine Utomo.
Thank you very much. Good morning. I have a question to the panel about the new UN Treaty on Marine Biodiversity Beyond National Jurisdiction, the BBNJ, which will enter into force actually in January following the ratification last month by Morocco. So the question is, what is your outlook of this BBNJ treaty as a confidence-building measure to build global maritime responsibility? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the last one in this round, I'll take Nick Childs.
Thank you, Bastian, and thank you to the panelists. You all, in your different ways, I think, underscored the global stakes in maritime security, but also the huge complexities. In terms of upholding freedom of navigation, there tends to have been historically a sense of the usual suspects, the traditional naval powers turning up to try and defend these principles. I wondered from each of your perspectives what you would highlight as the priority area in order to spread the burden wider, in order to get a broader uptake and buy-in in terms of defending these global principles. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. I'll go in reverse order for first set of responses, and then we'll return to the impressive list here of people who want to get in. Admiral, may I turn to you first? So NATO's role in protecting Red Sea maritime trade, the technology questions which came in one or two ways. There was a question on Kuwait and NATO, and I think maybe we'll start with those.
Okay. Great questions, and I think that the way that NATO operates is typically, but not exclusively, within its area of responsibility. So that does not include this region, but it has been expanded, of course. Afghanistan would be one example. Piracy would be the other, but not yet the Houthis. And one of the reasons for that is because there were very quickly missions established, Prosperity Garden being one, Aspides being the other. We have CTF 153, which is one of the constituent CTFs from the combined maritime forces that we've heard about. And the way that NATO supports those is by giving it some of their ships. So as the guy that is responsible for force sourcing and force generation for the alliance, the first thing that I saw when the Houthis got busy was the number of ships that I had at my disposal reduce. So there was a UK Type 45 destroyer down here, for example, that would have been with me had it not been down here. So we definitely support, because there's one force structure in the alliance and we use it for pretty much everything, whether that is under a NATO flag or not. CMF is a wonderful demonstration of the way in which maritime nations and indeed maritime capabilities can get along really well and unite around a number of different activities, whether that is 152 up here in the Gulf, or 151 with piracy, or 150 doing effectively counter narco, 153 up in the Red Sea. And when I was here as the deputy commander of the CMF, there were 32 nations, and as we've heard, there are now 47. So that's great. However, that is not a legal or a political union. So when it comes to trying to act in one voice or in one direction, it can be challenging. And also, I would say, within it, there are a lot of different types of warship. If you are serious about being able to shoot down ballistic missiles or cruise missiles in a very confined area like the Red Sea, you better turn up with the right kit, because otherwise you're going to get hurt. And there are not many nations that can actually put themselves in the firing line where that comes to pass. And some of those nations would admit that, and within the CMF, I feel sure. Kuwait, the Kuwait office, absolutely brilliant. We've got a great college there as well that is all centered around the Istanbul Cooperation Initiative. It offers many, many different and diverse courses and education in the name of our alliance, and we're superbly grateful. It's been one of the great success stories in the way that NATO has been able to demonstrate its partnering with this alliance. And then finally on the tech, I mean, you almost answered your own question. I mean, there is just so much. And I would say that what we're learning is that redundancy in the way particularly that cables are laid is really, really important. So the ability to be able to reroute data almost in stride is extremely important. Internal surveillance of pipelines has become pretty trendy, and we've got some nations now that are able to do all of their surveillance and basically internal security through internal drones, if you will, that whiz up and down the pipelines. Of course, if you can put a drone inside a pipeline to inspect it, you can put a drone inside a pipeline to blow it up. So, and that provides you with a whole world of new problems. Acoustic sensing as well is one of the other big areas that is starting to give us indicators, whether through noise or indeed through very small changes in seabed activity. So, and there are others. delighted to talk more on that offline.
Thank you very much. Senior Minister of State, perhaps you can also say a few words about the tech question. There was also a question on evolving hybrid threats in Asia. Expectations vis-à-vis Japan was another point that was put to you, and then the more overarching questions. Over to you.
Sure. I suppose the tech ones are the easier ones to tackle first. but I think for Singapore, the key question about what kind of defense tech we look at and what kind of tech we develop really center around our vulnerabilities as a small state trying to defend against much larger adversaries that you can see. I mean, and then two, the principles of really keeping maritime trade open, secure, being a shipping hub, which we are one of the most busy ports in the world. I think that's important that we continue to secure that. So if you think of those two as a start, and the third one I can think of is communication lines, because we are also a tech hub, in telecoms hub, communications hub, and therefore a lot of lines come in. So we talk about undersea water cables and pipelines. A lot of it comes through Singapore as well. So we do have these three. If you take these three into consideration, that's where defense tech for maritime comes to play, and where we develop are largely around those. So if I start off with the maritime aspects, I think AI continues to be an important part, especially with how you layer that with intelligence. So today we have the Intelligent Fusion, the IFC, the International Fusion Center, which we collaborate with many countries to share intelligence on potential threats, piracy, terrorism, risky cargoes that may come through our shores. And those are, I think, as a start, one way in which we can enhance intelligence sharing, where we alert countries, where we also board ships and use intelligence data to assess threat way in advance before they hit Singapore shores, for example. Because these are aspects in which, in the busy ports or busy strait, you don't want to have threat levels or having to take action within your congested sea lanes. You want to take action way before if you can. You want to intercept them if you can. I think that's one. Two, as a small state, we also have limited manpower, small capabilities. We have small ships. But what we've done recently was we launched our first MRCV vessel, multi-role combat vessel, which I would say it's a new concept for us, because it's now a mothership, sort of like a stealth ship that operates several drone ships around them. So it's almost like an autonomous fleet, which you have one mothership and several drones on surface, underwater as well. So these are things in which we use as a way of force multipliers to be able to conduct various operations, whether it's rescue, disaster relief, or other ops that you need to do to multiply your manpower, because we are a small state with a very small navy. So, and having to deal with a very big congested maritime strait, I think that becomes very important. The fortunate thing is that we are not, when we talk about hyper states, hyper threats, we're not claimant to any of the big EEZs or islands. So therefore, on that front, I think we're not directly under threat. But I think that, as I said earlier, military presence has to balance diplomacy, and that's statecraft today. I think that applies to Singapore. I think that's why we have the Shanghai Dialogue, which we aim to continue dialogue and process, but at the same time hard-coded and worked on with the ASEAN Defense Ministers meetings and the +8 countries. So you have big powers there, such as China, Japan, the US, all involved. I think that's very important, because then when we deal with code of conduct, when we deal with CUI, when we deal with other frameworks where we need to keep lines and trade information open in the South China Sea and through the Malacca Straits, I think those are important aspects in which you get the larger powers to come in, to agree on certain frameworks, to agree on certain codes, which over time we hope that reduces the risk of misunderstanding, at least in our waters. Right? So those are important aspects. So it's not just about the technologies I described earlier, but I think it's important to have codes of conduct and certain agreements and frameworks in place, so that we put up guardrails, we have certain understandings that we can come to, even with not just within the ASEAN states, but also big powers. On CUI, in my speech I spoke about how ASEAN states came together to agree on how we will work on CUI, because I think underwater infrastructure becomes very important to us. Many of us are dependent, as we spoke about earlier, when one of the communication lines was cut off in the Red Sea. I think you had communication between Europe and Asia being affected. And that, I think, will affect not just Singapore if something would happen to us, but also the rest of the ASEAN states. So initially, we didn't think that, we thought it would take a lot longer to get everyone to agree, but I was surprised that within a few months, we got this moving within ASEAN. I think everyone recognizes the critical importance of communication lines, gas pipelines, and other infrastructure within the busy straits. So I wouldn't say that things are perfect, but I think that dialogue helps us to get these conversations starting, get everyone understand to a certain baseline that's required to keep the defense mechanisms and how we do trade, communication lines, and all these engagements on an even keel. And lastly, I just want to say that with the on Japan, yes, there was a question on Japan as well. I can't speak for Japan, but I can fully understand why they would be thinking of expanding their military presence, because for many years since the World War II, they have always been kept within a framework where they are a self-defense force. So with the force portion now, and I think there is certainly appetite within the country to now think about building their own defense force. I can see why as well, because they are contesting on two fronts. On one hand, you've got China, and on one hand, you've got Russia, so there are contested islands on both sides, which I can understand. But if there's something I would say to the Japan Prime Minister would be, balance a military presence with diplomacy. I mean, while I can understand the need to defend your country, defend your people, but I think it's important that dialogue continues with your neighbors and other powers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Minister, if I can turn to you, there were a few high-level policy and strategy questions, and maybe as Minister of Foreign Affairs, you're best placed to answer those. There was a question about the balance between sovereignty and responsibility in maritime security. There was a question about treaties like the BBNJ as confidence-building measures for maritime responsibility, and how you feel about the priority for spreading the burden and gaining broader international support to defend the principles of freedom of navigation. So maybe those are themes, and anything else, of course, that you want to get into. Minister, over to you. Thank you.
Look, I believe that we need to increase the political bandwidth in relation to this issue. And we are facing, if you simplify it, it's a primitive threat against one of the most advanced sectors of the economy. So we are talking about introducing technology as a way of countering what's happening. And in my speech, I tried to raise the issue that the Houthis are using very low-cost technology. They are now, of course, adding to that capacity. So how do you try and tackle that? First of all, the military, all the technology, the intel sharing, it's critical, as the Admiral has said. But I believe that what you have been lacking is the political discussion, the political discourse that would support and provide the necessary tools. And there are interesting questions relating to diplomatic collaboration. There was a question about respecting sovereignty, how you balance that with international forces. There is concern in some countries in this part of the world that there is an over-militarization of the Red Sea. So all of these, I believe, are issues that could be part of a very focused dialogue. And in a sense, I totally agree that we need to have more burden sharing, because everyone, in one way or another, is affected by what is happening. There are countries that have the capacity, the military means. Other smaller countries do not have that. They could have the industries, but the information sharing, the use of technology, clever kind of ways of tackling what's happening, the financing of these operations. All of these, I believe, are issues that we could add to our toolbox. There is also, as I made the point earlier, the political signaling. And we have an EU mission in the area, speeders and so on, but at the same time, the paradox exists in the sense that we haven't listed the Houthis as a terrorist organization yet. There was a discussion a few years back. It didn't go through at the EU level. So it's a paradox because you have a mission. It's here. You have recognized the risk and the danger so that you have sent the mission. But at the same time, it's been approached as a political movement exclusively. So there is a toolbox there that if you unlock these options, it could add to the whole conversation into the mix. About CBMs in terms of treaties being ratified and so on, of course, this is a very well-regulated area. There are, of course, issues relating to gaps in the regulatory framework because it was introduced in a previous age. But anything that could add to the collaboration between states, I believe is something we should and we could be welcoming. So this asymmetry, we need to focus on that. We need to make sure also that we don't lose sight of the other side of the Red Sea. We are focusing on the Houthis, yes, but we can all see, I believe, a very serious risk now between the collaboration that the Houthis have with the African part, and with terrorist organizations, and with organizations and entities that are having access to technology that could enable them to cause similar kind of damage like the Houthis. And this, with the potential developments in Sudan, with presence of third countries trying to find the influence or to leverage influence there, this is creating a very complex, a bundle of threats whereby you could be facing an increase in the risk, not only from the Houthi side, but also from opposite. And I believe it's high time that we realize that the two are not separate. They are very much interconnected. There are serious issues relating to terrorism. There are serious issues relating to smuggling, issues relating to various other forms of violations of the basic principles underpinning the freedom of navigation. So a final point, for this to work, I believe we also need to make sure that we use all possible tracks. It's not just about diplomacy, but it's also not about the military aspect. There is something in between, and this is something also that I think we should be focusing on.
Thank you so much. So we'll take a second round of questions. If you can aim to be crisp and brief, then we'll get more people in. And the first one is Mohammed Al-Basha.
Yeah, my colleagues already asked the questions regarding what the NATO and the EU could do. But I just wanted to say to the Cyprus foreign minister, your remarks there on the Houthis was a breath of fresh air. And I want to just confirm to you that you're actually absolutely right, that the Houthis now are using civilian dual usage equipment to build a bigger industrial military complex. And they're testing more. This week, even they're testing more anti-ballistic ships. They're doing a lot of more things that eventually, within maybe this year or next year, they could reach the Mediterranean and beyond. So just to touch base, what is everyone trying to do with the local partners that they have in Yemen? I know that the government in Yemen is dysfunctional at this point, but what are some of the things they could do, and especially that we're seeing an uptick in interceptions of military equipment, missiles, drugs, human trafficking, but I'm not really sensing a lot of involvement from the Asian side or on the European side, with everybody just focusing on what the Saudis or the Americans would do, and most of the interest actually in the Red Sea is more connected to Europe and Asia. So thank you.
Thank you very much. And from Qatar, Sultan Al-Muhannadi.
Thank you. My question to the panelists is, given the increasing involvement of private actors in maritime security, from commercial shipping to data sharing, how can governments ensure public-private partnerships reinforce rather than complicate maritime governments, or as said by Dr. Combs, over-militarization of maritime governments? Lastly, if I may, another question. How can states improve information sharing and joint patrols without compromising sovereignty? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And from Bahrain and from the Young Leaders Group, Mona Al-Risais.
Thank you. Do you see the Istanbul Cooperation Initiative as still relevant for today's maritime security environment, given the increased complexities and heightened tensions? And are there any plans or discussions to encourage the other GCC states that are not, signatories? And also, we also have multiple multinational maritime missions operating in overlapping theaters. Is there a risk of fragmentation or duplication? And are there mechanisms to ensure strategic coordination rather than parallel efforts?
Thank you very much. From Germany, Wolf Christian Pees.
Yeah, thank you very much. Bastian, question for Mr. Kombos. You very eloquently spoke about the challenges in the Red Sea and also the links between the Houthis and African actors. My question to you would be, is the European Union doing enough to face it? Because I recall comments by Rear Admiral Kaparis, the commander of Aspides, multiple times, that there are not enough ships at his disposal, that certain European nations are very reluctant to deploy what they had once promised. And I sense a split within the European Union between the sort of southern Mediterranean states like yourselves and the Greek colleagues and much of the rest regarding the threat assessment. And a related question would be, seeing that there seems to be a degree of integration between the Houthis and African actors, wouldn't it be time to merge the two naval missions that the European Union has, Aspides and Atalanta? Because maybe there are some efficiencies there if we would have at least 5 warships at our disposal rather than 4 and 1. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And from Kenya, John Kiswa.
Thank you very much. Just to reiterate on the importance of information sharing. Last week, Kenya Navy was able to intercept a dhow about 400 nautical miles off Mombasa through a regional coordination mechanism where we have an information fusion center in Madagascar and a regional information correction operation center in Seychelles. Through that coordination, we were able to seize that dhow that was carrying drugs worth about $63 million. So the Western Indian Ocean is a very fast region, which also offers us an alternative to the route affected by the Houthi threat. Just a question to the panelists. What is the international community doing to assist coastal states that have limited capability to be able to respond to these maritime threats, particularly in the Western Indian Ocean? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And from the UK, Dom Morley. Dom.
Thank you very much. I have a question that follows on a bit from Sir John's observations around the adoption of technology in navies. We've just seen the UK's carrier strike group complete, or nearly complete, a global deployment over 9 months, conducting the freedom of navigation, the PASEX type training, and the people-to-people relationships that deployment has generated. As navies become more reliant through demographics and technology on autonomous platforms, do you see enough focus on the defence diplomatic relationship of maritime security services, as well as the attractions of the technological? And I wonder if you could comment on perhaps some of the dilemmas that might throw up.
Thank you very much. Final one I'll take is from Japan, Wakana Asano.
Yes, thank you so much. My question is for all of the panels about the subsea cables. So the subsea cables, as all of you mentioned, that there is the necessity for the regional and the global cooperation alignment, especially for both technological and legal aspects, so that it can be implemented for both globally, regionally, as well as the nationally. So I would like to ask the question that's how do you plan, how you expand your regional and international alignment and cooperation in terms of subsea cables and the data sharing?
Thank you very much. So we've got exactly 9 minutes left, which means 3 for each. Zaki, if I can start with you in this round, and then Admiral, I'll come to you, and the Foreign Minister has the concluding thoughts. Sure. With you.
I think mine, I'll just start off with the IFC. I do understand some of the concerns on how you use naval intelligence and how that can be better enhanced for countries that may not have the capacity. In fact, I think that's one of the reasons why we set up the IFCs. Singapore is one, for example, where we've got about 40 plus countries and about 24 countries deploy officers within our office, and some come as far as the US sitting there. That helps us as well. I think where you're able to carry information back to your countries and share across a network of IFCs. So I understand there's one in Africa or India that also manages that area too. I think this is important because ultimately, it's hard for just one or two countries to pick intel on their own. But I think if you can get information out quicker, I think that would be useful. One, but I think two, the key thing, as I spoke about earlier, AI and intelligence be very key, because then you want to be able to sieve out intelligence or preempt assessments or be able to preempt threats before they even happen. I think that would be very useful too. But I think, as Keith alluded earlier, sometimes some of these boats are a bit harder to detect because they are far out at sea and they may not carry the relevant signatures, and therefore it's always a challenge out here. But I think for us in Singapore, I have to admit, it's easier for us because it's a managed space. The Straits of Malacca and as well as South China Sea, I mean, it's bigger, but they are quite narrow in the sense that you are able to monitor them. But I think collaboration is key. As I mentioned earlier, with the CUI as an example, we talk about ASEAN states, we talk about where the cables are, how do where do we defend against. I think the level of cooperation is important, because it's not just about diplomacy. I agree with Minister for Cyprus, but it's also about building trust. And to that level, beyond just building diplomacy, putting agreements in place, I think joint exercises, being able to do things together, I think builds that trust levels. And same thing with the Carrier Strike Group question too. I mean, Singapore is a beneficiary, and they've come by as well, and we've done FPD exercises with them. I think that also enables not just the UK and Singapore, but countries around to also better understand and better, work as you work on exercises. I think that also builds trust amongst the various forces, and that I think creates more value than just frameworks and agreements, if you ask me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Admiral Keith.
So thank you. So just a few bullet point answers to some of these questions. The risk of information sharing and sovereignty, yeah, it's a risk, I accept, but there are plenty of demonstrations of how that has not been a material risk, and I would cite the Five Eyes intelligence group as one of those groups that shares extraordinary amounts of intelligence, and I'm sure they all feel sovereign. ICI, I still see it as relevant. I'm here because of it, or partly because of it, and of course we maintain active dialogue with the nations that are not signatories, in the hope that they would be, those being Saudi Arabia and Oman. Fragmentation risks in overlapping maritime operations, always, it can be a bit of a bugbear for us in the military sometimes. However, I would use the example of counter-piracy as one where the structure of the shared awareness and deconfliction meetings that used to be hosted here, one most recently in Qatar, where you would sit the EU down with the CMF, with NATO, with nations that were not in the CMF at that point, like India, with Russia, with China, and we'd actually sort ourselves out to make sure that we didn't pose a risk of fragmentation. That worked really rather well. Europe being prepared to send warships down here. Things are pretty busy in Europe right now, and I will return to the office in a few days to further threats of airspace violations, the shadow fleet, underwater infrastructure going bang, and various other things. So it's not a case of Europe not wanting to do more, it's simply a case of stretched resources. And this is why when I joined the Royal Navy, if I'd asked the First Sea Lord, the head of our naval service, to name all of the ships in the Royal Navy, even as the First Sea Lord, I expect I would have won a bet that he would not have been able to do it, because we had too many ships. Now, if I asked the head of the Royal Navy to name all of the ships in the Royal Navy, he would do it in a heartbeat, and he's a Royal Marine. So imagine how easy that challenge is today, and that is because we just have disinvested. We do not have enough warships, and that's why NATO has set a new defence investment pledge, 3.5% on core military capability by 2035. In the UK, that would see a doubling in real terms of our defence budget. And that's one of the reasons you don't see warships everywhere you would like to see them. And I'll just finish on these subsea cables, right? One of the things that nations can do, and those representing government departments and ministries here, do take some time to polish off your ability to deal with that as a crime, and make sure you really understand where your rights are comparing your exclusive economic zone, your contiguous zone, your territorial waters, who's going to take responsibility for it. Do you have the prosecution lawyers that are trained to prosecute in that particular area? So are you internally structured to deal with this? Because there's a lot of talk about it, but I promise you that is challenging, and it has proved to be the case in incidents in and around Europe. I'll close there.
Splendid. Thank you very much. Foreign Minister.
Yes, telegraphically. I mean, we need to act with a sense of urgency, I believe. I agree that there is a fragmentation in terms of strategy and policy. There is duplication at the same time. I sincerely think that we need a strategy. We have too many. Everyone is trying to do it on their own, and I think that this is something that we could work together and try and divide somehow the workload. And for that to take place, of course, you need the political backing. Unfortunately, and this is the answer to the question whether the EU is doing enough or not, it certainly can do more. We can all do more. The main problem is getting the issue on the agenda, exactly because there is a different assessment of threat based on geography to a large extent. So right now the EU threat assessment primarily is towards Russia with what's happening in Ukraine. So how do you get the attention in relation to that of the rest of the member states, not just the Mediterranean countries? I think it's clear that there is a commercial advantage to Russia, China, and others from what's happening. We don't have a horizontal kind of situation where everyone is at the same risk. And this is not a political analysis. This is if one looks at the numbers from the underwriting in relation to the risks for vessels going through. It's clear that there is a differentiation there. So we have to have this conversation. We need to do more. Having more assets in the area would be the logical answer, perhaps. But going back to the point I made earlier, the threat we are facing and the technology we have against us doesn't necessarily mean that we have to operate on a level of warships. There could be some more imaginative way. I mean, the experts are here. But it's not like we're facing a military force in the conventional kind of way. What they are doing is they are creating a danger zone, the risk of being attacked. And this is something that's extremely difficult. So politically, we need to give the green light to the people on the ground. We need to give them as much of the resources as they need. We need to focus on intelligence sharing and preemptive action, and we need to have the conversation so that we can come up with one single holistic strategy.
Splendid. Thank you very much. That concludes our sixth plenary session. May I invite you to thank our speakers for a fantastic session. Thank you. Can I have them? Thank you. Okay. We have a very short staging break now, and we'll immediately turn it over into our concluding plenary. The speakers are in the room, so don't go anywhere. We'll continue right away. Thank you. Your Excellencies, dear delegates, may I invite you to take your seats so that we can continue at pace with the concluding plenary session of the 21st ISS Manama Dialogue. The session is entitled Another Nuclear Age, Strategic Risk and Opportunity. We have all noticed, and in fact it has been discussed on the margins of our debate on energy already during the Manama Dialogue, that there is growing interest in nuclear energy worldwide, given rising demands, notably to power technological and industrial projects. Many governments are embarking on new civilian energy programs and are considering the deployment of new designs for smaller nuclear reactors. In parallel, fraying global security and questions about the relevance of global non-proliferation rules are prompting new thinking about nuclear deterrence and the merits of military nuclear programs. And I would add that recent conflict and war, in fact, certainly in the case of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, but also Israel and Iran, has probably, if anything, underlined the importance of nuclear weapons and the nuclear component of deterrence. So in this session we will discuss the merits, trade-offs and risks inherent to emerging nuclear ambitions, civilian and military. And I have two outstanding speakers here with me to help us do that. Admiral Giuseppe Cavodragone, the chair of the Military Committee of NATO. In this role, he is the principal military advisor to the Secretary General of NATO and NATO's most senior military officer. As you will know, he was Italy's Chief of Defence Staff from 2021 to 2024, and he was Chief of the Italian Navy from 2019 to 2021. And we have, to my left, Ana Berchal, the former Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Justice of Romania, who currently serves as a presidential advisor to the government of Romania, and also, I believe, to Romania's nuclear energy companies, who are part state-owned, if I'm informed correctly, so we'll have a fantastic blend of experience. Admiral, may I invite you to take the podium and deliver your remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And Excellencies, distinguished guests, and ladies and gentlemen, I'm really honored to address here in Manama, a place that reminds us that dialogue and security are inseparable, and that peace is not built on hope alone, but on understanding and responsibility. Let me start with a question. If a month ago I would have mentioned words like Poseidon, Burevestnik, steadfast noon, how many of us would have associated them with the topic of this panel? I think I doubt many. And yet, they were among the most goggled words in the last 3 weeks. A sign that today's discussion comes really timely, in my view. When I began my career as a naval aviator almost 5 decades ago, deterrence was an equation of two powers, two doctrines, and two arsenals. The logic was severe, but in a way more predictable. Fast forward to today, we notice that we are in a much more complex, dynamic, and potentially more unstable age. An age shaped by emerging and competing threats that, by extension, if not handled carefully, could endanger us all. As I said, the Cold War's nuclear order was binary and therefore, in a paradoxical way, stable. Since the end of the Cold War, allied nuclear powers have reduced the number of their nuclear warheads in Europe by over 90%. This is because NATO allies support the ultimate goal of a world without nuclear weapons. But allies have also been clear. As long as there is a nuclear weapon in the world, NATO will remain a nuclear alliance. In today's world, deterrence has become a mosaic of actors, technologies, and perceptions. Russia uses nuclear rhetoric as a tool of coercion. China expands its arsenal under veil of secrecy. North Korea continues to defiantly test its nascent nuclear capabilities. And it has teamed up with Moscow and others who are determined to uproot the rule-based international order that has shaped the world we have flourished in. And let's not forget Iran, who continues to provide support to Russia in its war of aggression against Ukraine, to defy various UN Security Council resolutions on non-proliferation, and not to fulfill its legal obligation under its non-proliferation treaty. This is why the NATO alliance remains committed to ensuring greater integration and coherence of capabilities and activities across all domains, while reaffirming the unique and distinct role of nuclear deterrence. So we are not revisiting the past. We are navigating an entirely new strategic environment, one that multiplies risk through uncertainties. And in the business of defense and strategic deterrence, uncertainty is what keeps us all up at night. Let's then face it. The danger today does not lie primarily in the size of arsenals, but in the erosion of understanding and surety. When communication channels close, stated doctrines are undermined by action to the contrary, and divisive rhetoric replaces restraint and conciliatory language, the potential of miscalculations increases exponentially. A cyber intrusion may be misinterpreted as a blatant attack. An autonomous system could react faster than human judgment. A regional incident might spiral into a global crisis. This is not science fiction. This is a reality that demands for strategic stability to continue to rely on clarity, predictability, and dialogue, even among adversaries. Let me remind you, the fundamental purpose of NATO's nuclear deterrent is to preserve peace, prevent coercion, and deter aggression. As I said, as long as nuclear weapons exist, NATO will remain a nuclear alliance, whose approach is underpinned by the principle of safety, security, effectiveness, and credibility. Our deterrence and defense posture combines an appropriate mix of conventional, nuclear, cyber, and space capabilities integrated into a coherent whole. And since operational readiness is essential to maintain such an approach, Allied armed forces regularly exercise this capability, transparently, predictably, and collectively. Our exercises are not about provocation. They are about interoperable effectiveness and transparent communication of our capabilities, upholding our credibility and resolve to defend our alliance. Regular training ensure procedures are sound, communication are clear, and our people, from the highest commander to the youngest technician, fully prepared to act with professionalism and resilience. Strategic deterrence, after all, only works if it is capable, credible, and communicated. A predictable example is NATO's nuclear deterrence exercise Steadfast Noon, held every year in the autumn in the north or south of the alliance. Steadfast Noon does not feature the use of live nuclear weapons. This year involved roughly 2,000 personnel and around 70 aircraft from 14 allied nations, including a mix of conventional and dual-capable aircraft. Supporting assets included surveillance, air-to-air refueling, and command and control aircraft. The 2025 edition just ended successfully, and transparently, sending a clear message to any adversary. NATO can and will protect and defend all allies against all threats. And then the human factor. I'm sure many of you watch Netflix House of Dynamite. In times where technology accelerates, compressing time may blur threshold. And this reminds us that deterrence still depends above all on human interpretation and judgment. Machines may calculate probabilities, but they do not bear the moral weight of consequences. They cannot pause, reflect, or choose restraint. That responsibility remains and must always remain within people. As military leaders, our duty is to provide unfettered, honest, and experienced advice to political authorities who will ultimately make the decision. To say not what it is convenient, but what it is true. And we must remember, nuclear deterrence is not simply the Western concern. It is a global responsibility. The Middle East, Europe, and the Indo-Pacific are connected strategic ecosystems. Instability in one reverberates in all. That is why NATO has developed tailored partnership with the regional actors, with international organizations, and with all those sharing our interest in preventing escalation and ensuring global stability. Together, we must cultivate global culture of transparency, risk reduction, and responsible behavior to make the nuclear deterrent a tool to constructive dialogue and confidence building, with the ultimate goal of preserving peace and prosperity for our future generations. It is through this approach that we can also fully align with our determination to support arms control, disarmament, and non-proliferation. We are strongly supportive of the Non-Proliferation Treaty as the only credible path to nuclear disarmament. We are constantly working to improve our collective security through tangible and verifiable measures that can reduce strategic risks and enable real progress in this matter. But again, a world in which Russia, China, North Korea, and others have nuclear weapons, while NATO does not, is not a safer world. And I conclude, ladies and gentlemen, the first nuclear age taught us restraint. Today's congested security landscape is already testing us. If we respond with discipline, unity, and clarity, this new age needs not to inherit the danger of the last. It can grow more stable and more predictable. The French philosopher Paul Valéry once wrote, "The future is not what it used to be. Indeed, it is not, and perhaps it will never be again. But if we remain united, vigilant, and guided by responsibility, we can ensure that even in this new era, we will continue to serve peace and not cause unnecessary danger." Thank you.
Admiral, thank you very much for those remarks. When you started with Poseidon and Burevestnik, I thought I personally know 40 people who have, since 2018, since these systems were first unveiled, spent a lot of time thinking about them. And they are the members of the ISS Defensive Military Analysis Program, where we do pay a lot of attention to these developments. So we might want to talk about capability later on. But also, I think that point about NATO's thinking about escalation as we move from, through these situations of uncertainty in a nuclear context, I think that's a very important point as well. Anna, may I invite you to take the podium, please? Anna Becher.
Thank you very much, Bastian. Let me begin by thanking IISS and the Kingdom of Bahrain for inviting me here again. It is a true honor and pleasure to be here, and I congratulate IISS, Sir John Chipman, for putting this topic as so relevant today into our agenda. We are indeed entering another nuclear age, but this time it must not be defined by fear or competition, but by responsibility, vision, and courage. Nuclear energy today represents far more than electricity. It stands at the intersection of security, sustainability, and strategic autonomy. It guarantees long-term energy independence, supports decarbonization, and strengthens national resilience in a world increasingly marked by uncertainty. If you had told me even a decade ago that nuclear would become fashionable again, I might have smiled politely, even though as a lawyer I would argue, with great success I might say, that you are wrong, because nuclear energy is among the cleanest sources of energy, and this is science, not politics. And yet, here we are in 2025, with presidents, ministers, and CEOs all suddenly speaking fluent fission and fusion. And this is a very good thing, because nuclear energy, long undervalued, has re-emerged as a strategic resource, a guarantor of energy sovereignty, a prerequisite for industrial competitiveness, and a decisive contributor to national security. However, this new nuclear age comes with significant strategic risks that you, Amiral, mentioned, and if you allow me, I will complement with a few others. The global nuclear fuel cycle, from uranium to enrichment and fabrication, is increasingly a field of geopolitical contest. Supply chains are tightening. Critical infrastructures has become a concern in conflict zones, and adversarial actors are attempting to leverage energy dependence as a tool of coercion. We also face a generational challenge. The world needs more reactors than we have skilled workers, manufacturing capability and capacity, or regulatory bandwidth ready to deliver. If we allow these vulnerabilities to define the future, then nuclear progress could become a new source of instability, rather than resilience and progress. Yet, the true promise of nuclear technology lies beyond power generation. For 70 years, the world nuclear has carried two faces, one bright, one dark. It can light cities or destroy them. It heals through nuclear medicine, diagnostics, and cancer treatment, or it can create a catastrophe. It feeds through advances in agriculture, soil management, and food security. It protects by monitoring our oceans, atmosphere, and groundwater, helping us fight climate change. It innovates, opening new frontiers in clean hydrogen, advanced material, artificial intelligence, and even space exploration. The same technologies that power our industries can, if misused, undermine our security. The same uranium that fuels hospitals can, if in the wrong hands, fuel weapons. We are witnessing not just a technological revival, but a civilization test. Can humanity finally use its most powerful invention not as a weapon of fear, but as an instrument of progress? Yes, we build reactors for energy, but we must also rebuild the framework of peace. Used wisely and ethically, nuclear energy is not a weapon of the past, but a foundation for the future, a tool for peace, prosperity, and progress. It can bring nations together throughout cooperation, transparency, and shared standards, transforming what was once a symbol of fear into a symbol of trust. Let me share with you in a few words, and maybe during the questions, a little bit more about Romanian lessons, because it's a responsibility. We saw responsibility as being a power. Romanian experience, my country, tells a story worth hearing. Decades ago, in the 1970s, we made a choice to use North American technology, the CANDU technology, not the Russian one. And Romania was among the very few countries, if not the only country in Central Eastern Europe, to reject Russian technology from the very beginning. And it was a very smart move, right? We are one of the few EU member states that have maintained and expanded our civilian nuclear program in full compliance with the highest international safety and non-proliferation standards. We have 4 power plants, we have 2 in use and 2 to build, and as I will mention later, we signed up with the American SMR technology. Again, we were among the very first, and we were very smart to do so. For us, from the very beginning, energy security was and continues to be a matter of national security, and both depend on trust, professionalism, and respecting the highest international standards of safety and integrity. That is perhaps the most underrated truth of this nuclear age. Technology means nothing without integrity. The real challenge of this new nuclear age is not about, and it's not just about only technological, but moral issue as well. It is a test of character, whether we have the leadership and wisdom to use this immense power in the service of humanity, not against it. Because in the end, the way we choose to shape the nuclear age will reveal not just our scientific capability, but the true measures of our global responsibility. Civilian nuclear power is no longer a marginal option. It has become a rational necessity. In such an advanced technological era, we cannot avoid the civilian use of nuclear energy. This is precisely why responsibility is not a choice, but a condition for survival. I was mentioning earlier about the SMRs from US, for example. They are not just an engineering trend. They are a moral opportunity. The bright that brings reliable, affordable and clean energy to places long left in the dark, to turn former coal sites into symbols of rebirth, to make the energy transformation not a burden but a bridge. And yes, Romania is among the first countries to go with the US SMR's technology, another smart move on our side. Because nuclear power is evolving from a single-purpose asset into a genuine engine of economic transformation and climate leadership. This transformation momentum is particularly relevant in the Middle East, and maybe we can elaborate a little bit later, because I don't want Bastian to say that I am overstepping my time. Ladies and gentlemen, let's be honest. The phrase another nuclear age might sound frightening, but it doesn't have to be, because this time we know what's at stake. We know that proliferation destroys, but cooperation builds. We know that transparency is the real deterrent. The future will not belong to those who should shout the loudest, but to those that think the longest. That means investing not only in reactors, but in regulations, in financing, not only in fuel, but in education, not only in power plants, but in public trust. Without those, megawatts means very little. The question before us is clear. Will this new nuclear age reinforce division and insecurity, or it will create a foundation for a more resilient and cooperative world? Let's remember, nuclear power at its core is not about atoms, it's about people, about the scientists who believe knowledge can save lives, the engineers who turn equalization and equations into light, and the citizens that trust and put their trust into their leaders to act with wisdom and courage, not with populism. Let this new nuclear age be defined not by confrontation, but by cooperation, not by race for dominance, but by race for wisdom. We hold in our hands a force powerful enough to destroy or to sustain the future of humanity. What we choose to do will define who we are. We have the knowledge, we have the technology, we now must have to prove that we also have the conscience, because the nuclear age ahead of us will not be written by those who fear its power, but by those who choose to use the power with purpose. The true power of the nuclear new age doesn't lie in the atom itself, but in our humanity, in our choice to make this power save lives, not threaten them. Let nuclear power no longer be a whisper of destruction, but a declaration of human responsibility. And if we succeed, perhaps one day our children will look back at this moment and say, they were the generation who turned the atom from a weapon into a promise of shared security and prosperity. Thank you so much.
Anna Beja, thank you so much for these remarks, and I think thank you in particular for extending our conversation into the themes that have actually been quite prominent here at the Manama Dialogue, energy, prosperity, and that intersection with international security. I think we have the perfect blend here on stage, civilian and military expertise, military and political expertise. So we're ready to take your questions, and we have about half an hour for debate. So I'll take a whole set. It's already a good list. So if you want to ask a question, you should get in the queue now, because it is growing to a considerable length. And we'll start with Sarah Tamim from Bahrain and the Young Leaders Group. Sarah.
Thank you, Excellencies, for this insightful session. My question is, with the new emerging technologies such as AI, cyber operations, and hypersonic systems now intersecting with the nuclear strategies, do you believe we're entering an era where technology increases instability, or could innovation actually create new tools for risk reduction and verification? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And from the UK, James Hackett.
Thanks, Bastian. I've got a long list, but I'll just stick to a couple. Earlier this year, the UK rejoined NATO's DCA capability, or stated an intention to do that, with announced planned purchases of F-35As. In light of the capabilities you're talking about that Russia at least has announced the testing of, what should be next for NATO's European members in terms of nuclear capability development? And if I can, another quick one. I noted your discussion about steadfast noon, and I noted earlier the messaging around that, which was a significant change. Looking more broadly at how NATO demonstrates its military capability and its resolve, will we see greater assertiveness from the alliance in terms of messaging in the scale, purpose, and function of its broader military exercise regime? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And from Germany, Alex Bolfras.
Thank you, Bastian. I have two questions for the Admiral. We, of course, know that the New START treaty, whatever's left of it, is expiring in February. So first, I wonder whether we should anticipate any material changes to the Russian nuclear arsenal after that event. And second, you talked about risk reduction measures, and I wonder if you had some ideas on what could be pursued between Russia and NATO if a follow-on treaty to New START is not possible. And if you'll just permit me a brief addendum to James's question, I wonder if you might have some views on whether it would make sense to add more DCA hosts among NATO countries, especially with the large gap among tactical nuclear weapons between Russia and NATO. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, from Pakistan, Atiya Ali Kazmi.
Thank you, Dr. Bastian. Excellent presentations. My question for respected Admiral is that the Indian Ocean security is increasingly shaped by the intersection of regional conflicts and extra-regional deployments. So after the May 2025 conflict with Pakistan, New Delhi signaled that any future aggression would be taken to the maritime domain. And we know that in the Arabian Sea, NATO's naval assets also operate. So how does the NATO factor in its threat calculus the risk of inadvertent or accidental entanglement for a potential India-Pakistan confrontation at sea? And my question for Madam Minister is, who aptly highlighted that new nuclear technologies are reshaping the landscape of peaceful cooperation, but they also blur the lines between civil and strategic use. So as the SMRs and other advanced systems spread beyond traditional frameworks, what mechanisms can ensure transparency, safeguards, and trust in such cooperation outside the NPT's conventional arrangements? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And from the UK, Tom Beckett.
Thank you, Bastian. It might appear that this is more for you, Admiral, but Anna, based on your last piece about turning nuclear into something for peace and not for war, I'd really appreciate your view as well. I mean, I think nuclear capability, it seems to me, is a system of systems, and you mentioned one of those, Admiral, which was strategic messaging. The other important ones are targeting, delivery, and survival. And that is having the civil military capacity to survive an exchange as a nation. In this part of the world, Prince Mohammed bin Salman said that if Iran got a bomb, then Saudi would too. In your assessment, how many potentially aspiring nuclear states would have the capability to build the system, and what measures should be considered over and above what we already do to enforce the NPT?
Thank you very much. From Bahrain and the Young Leaders Group, Nauf Al-Awadi.
Thank you, Bastian. When it comes to nuclear energy, as mentioned by the panel, there's the pros and cons. However, unpredictable state actors have used it as a political tool, and which has somewhat brought us back to the days of the Cold War. Therefore, could nuclear energy become a tool of political leverage or coercion between nations, especially with unpredictable states developing their nuclear capabilities? Thank you.
Thank you very much. From the United States, Jacob Olidor.
Thank you very much. I'm with the America First Policy Institute. The 12-day war and Operation Midnight Hammer could be seen as an inflection point, changing from deterrence to prevention of strategic risk. I wonder if the panelists could describe what this moment represents and whether it opens up new opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. From Jordan and from the Young Leaders Group, Mohammed Hawash.
Thank you. So looking at current projections for the Gulf region, by around 2040 there will be 30 nuclear reactors just on the Gulf Rim, 16 in Saudi, 4 in the UAE, 8 in Iran, a few others. This is not including SMRs. So how do you think this will affect NATO's posture towards the region, and what are the consequences of this for the world as a whole?
Thank you very much. Ben Schreier from Germany.
Thank you, Bastian. My question also is for Admiral Dragoni. Recently, former NATO Secretary General Lord Robertson called for UK-German nuclear sharing and a more Europeanized approach to NATO's nuclear deterrence in general. Could I please get your views on how realistic that is? Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I'll take two more. From the UK, Fenella McGurty.
Thank you, Bastian. My question is for Admiral Dragoni. I think in light of what needs to be done and the fiscal pressure countries are under, do you find that they are prioritizing investment accordingly, not just in terms of their defense budget, but also in terms of civil security and energy security, not just in these capabilities and the supporting infrastructure, but also personnel? Thanks.
Thank you very much. And Simon Mayle.
Yeah, thank you very much, Bastian. I'm always interested when we use the thing, another nuclear age. Half the people listening instantly go over to the defensive use or nuclear weapons, and the other half, to an extent, look on the opportunities. And I always worry that the language in this arena is really difficult, because it's quite clear, talking to people like Mr. Darnley the other day, that we're looking for an era of energy abundance, in which nuclear will play an increasing part. It must do. We're building data centers alongside small nuclear reactors. And somewhere we need some new vocabulary and new language that breaks out the weaponization of nuclear power and, of course, the huge potential that nuclear power offers with an increasing global population. Because as soon as you say nuclear, instantly people, drive down this dichotomy of which bits we're referring to. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So there's a lot on the table, and I'll give both speakers several minutes to respond to these questions. And I might ask you to start this round of responses. There were several questions about nuclear technology like SMRs and others, the transparency and trust around those, nuclear energy as a tool for political coercion and leverage, given the range of countries that are developing these capabilities. And I think there's a general question around increasing instability, or whether we can counter that with new tools for risk reduction, verification, and then there were a few other things that you might want to pick up on. Yes. So why don't I ask you to start this round?
Thank you so much, Bastian. Thank you for the questions. It's not just nuclear as being weaponized. I can share with you, since my own experience in 2018-2019, I was Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Justice in Romania, and we were arguing, me and the Prime Minister of Poland at that time, to take away the energy from Putin's hands because he's going to use it as a weapon. So, yes, a friend from UK mentioned when we say nuclear, it's like a bow in the room, and that's why I was so grateful and pleased that you put today on this great platform the nuclear energy, because we need to not just build the trust, as I was trying to say in my introductory remarks, but likewise to have the framework where the responsibility is the new power, because we need to have that collective responsibility, but likewise the share of the tools, because yes, you can always abuse being, the energy. Look at the Black Sea region, my part of the world region, in my part of the world, one power, a nuclear power, is using its power to threaten our region, and we are fighting very hard, and we are grateful for your help as well, to not allow that region to become a theater of conflicts. And that's why the energy, if we look, it's science. I'm not a technical person, but through the years I've been educating myself about the benefits of the nuclear, because in 2018-19 I was involved in unblocking, along with other great people from Romania, unblocking our potential in our nuclear power plants. And if you need any expertise or any knowledge, we will be very happy to share with you, because you mentioned here, a friend from the audience mentioned that we will be having so many capacities of reactors building, and yet let's not forget to invest in the education, to invest in the skills. Romania is very proud to have this knowledge, and we are very happy to share it. Like, for example, one power plant, the Baraka plant, has been built with a lot of experts from Romania. We are with the SMRs. Yes, the SMRs might be frightened, and maybe the military colleagues here in the room might pick up on this as well. The SMR technology is not a new technology. It's the same technology that is being used on the nuclear submarines, on the submarines. So it's just a more affordable tool of providing the energy, because in my opinion and in our opinion, the energy, it's a matter of civilization, and it's a matter of fundamental rights. That's why we need to use the energy not as a weapon, being any type of energy, but likewise the nuclear energy as well, where it could be a game changer as well. So when it comes to unpredictability, yeah, anything can be not predictable and have risks. But I think if we are, that's why I mentioned and I stress several times, this is a time of a game changer, but it's a time of our true values and character. Do we have the character and the courage, and do we have the leaders that will be pursued with courage to turn this great science, okay, the atom that the scientists came and gave it to us, to turn it into a tool for peace and for shared security and prosperity. And it's up to us. And the ones that are not going to abide with this, yes, you should have very strong sanctions. Because, you know, as in law, you have obligations, you have rights and obligations. So it's about, you know, the shared responsibility that will drive the new era into a shared prosperity.
Anna, thank you for that. Can I ask you to say a few more words on, there was a question on, and as a representative of a European NATO member state, do you think the alliance should be more assertive in its messaging and exercises perhaps around this question of its nuclear capability? That's one point that I wanted to see whether you have thoughts on. And then Jacob's question on whether it looks to you, looking at the 12-day war here in the region, Operation Midnight Hammer, are we moving, does it feel to you that we're moving from deterrence to prevention? And if so, what does that mean? Is it an opportunity or is it a risk? How do you look at those two?
To start with the last one, I think, yes, it is. We are moving towards deterrence, towards the peace, and it's up to us, again, to go along, and it's a huge opportunity. You know, things can turn from one day to another, but I hope that we will stay on the course of the peace, because that's most important. And again, yes, nuclear could be very scary. But if we are building that trust, you know, the reason why Romania, you know how much trust is among the Romanian population for the nuclear, and on a consistent basis, 70, 80%. You know why is that? Firstly, because we operate the power plants in Cernavodă at the highest level of security, okay, and responsibility. But likewise, and those are the criteria, international criteria, that we are very proud that we are right on top there. But likewise, we are not complacent. We are educating our citizens every single day. Yes, we are living in a world of manipulation. Yes, we are facing all the tools that are being provided in the region to try to undermine the trust of a new tool of energy that will be abandoned, as our friend from US was saying yesterday. But likewise, if you are not complacent, if you are investing, including in the education, and rebuild that, why did I say rebuild the frame of peace and trust? Because we need to rebuild the frame of trust among ourselves and among what the nuclear energy is meaning and what are the true benefits, because everybody is looking at the nuclear but how many old is the water? And that it's a strong tool to really plan in advance, where you could actually help regions, including for food. And then, you know, if we go into more details, you could see that you can even create crops, not artificial ones, you know, but actually real crops with the same properties, but according to the conditions that are, and this might be very important for this area. With the SMRs, as I mentioned, we were very courageous. Yes, there's been a lot of manipulation in our region as well, but the SMRs are providing, they are very easy to install, they are providing this huge opportunity of a new era of energy, where the energy is not going to be just a luxurious or a very expensive you know, tool, but actually a very affordable and reliable one. And at the EU, because we need to learn our lessons at the EU level, okay? I was not talking about the EU per se. I am a very pro-European person. I was on the team to go Romania into NATO and the EU. But we need to be realistic and learn the lessons at the EU level as well, because I was in the battle with the taxonomy. Because one challenge for the nuclear projects are the financing, okay? Finding the tools for the financing, because at the beginning they are quite expensive. But when you look at the long term, when you do the math, and the math is so simple, you will see that actually is the cheapest, among the cheapest sources of energy. So we need to find, one challenge is to find the tools of providing the financing, and here the international financial institutions should actually start now looking more carefully of what does it mean to invest in the nuclear nuclear energy as well. And at the EU level, we managed to put the nuclear alongside with the gas into so-called taxonomy. That is giving a very good, powerful tool for the financing.
Anna, thank you so much. Admiral, there were, if I counted correctly, 6 questions directed at you, a lot to do with NATO's view of nuclear capability. Post-New START, how do you see Russia's capability evolving? Should NATO have more DCA, dual-capable hosts? There was the UK-Germany question, and also how NATO might look at its own threat calculus and how it might integrate thinking of a potential conflict India-Pakistan, and also spreading of nuclear civilian capability across other regions. So I'll invite you to take a few minutes to answer those and tap into any others that you might want to pick up from the general set of questions. Admiral.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I need to admit that I grabbed the microphone a little bit late, so if I'm missing something, you're going to help me out.
I will help you out, yes.
Give me answer. Thank you very much. I mean, pretty different question. Let me go through what I got on my notes. The nuclear has a coercion for states. I mean, that's the reason why we are the alliance. And probably the coercion would work towards single state, maybe the smaller one or the one not with the new capability. But again, this is the meaning of being the alliance. That's the insurance that every single state sign to get the protection from the whole community. And you know better than I that for 76 years, I mean, United States, UK, and France, with their capability, have been providing us good level deterrence, because here we are, and nothing happened from then on. So I would say that coercion is around the corner, but I think that the alliance has the tool and the capability to transmit the message that no one of us could be threatened by any potential adversary, because they will lose more than what they will gain. That's basically one thing, one of the question. The 12 days war. That was, let's say again, a last step of deterrence. It was something probably shocking, but that came after a long story of misleading behavior from Iran. So something should be done, and just to convince them that couldn't get along with that kind of behavior. And that has been done, and I think, honestly, it worked. It has been done in a pretty hard way. I think that from the overall view, the loss of life have been reduced at the minimum, just to achieve a strategic result with the minimum loss. But again, that's something that probably should have been done, because I mean that the path that Iran took and was following was not anymore acceptable. So as far as I can define that, that's a pretty strong way to deter, and I think they did, and I think it was successful. On 2040, we'll have 20 reactors in the area. Well, that's the reason why we are a partner. We are of course, and the reason why we are here, I'm here, is that because partnership, as I said, is equal as the alliance. I mean that a partner has for us the same value, the same importance as an alliance, and that's why we are here in this area. And whatever it will happen, and whatever will be the decision that every single state will take in the future, I mean, we will be more than glad to be, part of it, to be involved, and to keep and to deepen our relationship and our connection with the area. So we are not afraid about the 20 reactors, because we are positive that they will be used in a proper way, and will be beneficial for the area, and also for the NATO itself, having I mean, configuration on this part of the world, which is stable, which is healthy, which is wealthy, and that's basically it. So nothing wrong with this. UK and German nuclear dialogues. Well, there are two countries from the alliance. So again, anything they're strong allied. So anything will come up from their speeches and their decision on this area will be, of course, beneficial for the whole of the alliance. So we are looking. I think all the alliance is watching what's going on and probably being enthusiastic for the benefits we will get from this kind of enterprise.
Would you welcome more DCA nations in NATO, or do you think there needs to be more nuclear sharing in that regard?
Okay, now what we are doing, and Steadfast Noon was just the proof that we did. We had potential nuclear potential which is well above our adversary. There's no need of it. But we need to be flexible. We need to adapt to the threat, and so I mean I'm expecting that. I mean we will evolve, and we will keep on our training. We will keep on our planning. We will keep on our updating of our capability. Of course, DCA aircraft is not just the package is not just DCA. It's a huge number of aircraft, ISR, CAP, air refueling, and on and on. It is a pretty complicated business, but I think we will evolve in that sense. I think that more nations will be available to be DCA capable. That's just redundancy. That's just resilience. So they're more than welcome, and we are working on that direction. What else? In the back competition, I mean, of course, NATO has not been involved in directly, but of course, from the political, military not involved. From the political point of view, we have been monitoring that, and again, I think that deterrence worked at that point. I mean, I think at a certain point, very, very maturely, probably also with the intervention of Mr. Trump, but again, the struggle, the war, let's call it, the battle ended with a small amount of casualties compared to what maybe we could expect from a kind of evolution or increase in the fighting. Probably being too strong nation in the area helped that to keep that kind of regain equilibrium and balance that we got after a couple of weeks of fighting. How to increase NPT? I don't know if I'm wrong. I think it will expire on April 26th. Is that correct? But
we start.
Yeah.
There's a non-proliferation treaty.
Yeah, but non-proliferation treaty. How to improve that? I mean, just with the example from the NATO point of view, of course, we are dependent on the sovereign decision of the three nations, but it is an effort that we need to keep on exercising. NATO itself as an alliance is totally aligned with the non-proliferation treaty, and we will work on that direction. We, the 32, we work together on that direction, putting the most of our energy in trying to achieve results on that area.
Can I ask you to close on Russia? Your predecessor as CMC, somewhat controversially at the time, at an ISS event last year, said if Russia didn't have nuclear weapons, NATO members would all be in Ukraine kicking the Russians out. I'm not going to ask you whether you agree with that statement, but I wanted to ask you whether you could say something about how important you think the nuclear dimension is in that war, and how NATO should react to it.
Well, the nuclear has been used by President Putin sometime, every now and then, recently for the Tomahawk issue. The nuclear stuff is used now as messages, as a strategic communication mainly from the Russian side. But again, and we can analyze that it happens every single time they are in difficulties. That's something that probably it's the card that they put on the table whenever they feel that something could go wrong. Tomahawk is just the latest one, but if you see that it was a kind of periodical, whenever there was kind of feeling that something could be in their disadvantage. Up to now, it is just a theoretical menace, a threat that they are using. We are taking the way it is, just a threat, because I don't think we will get to that point.
Thank you very much. Admiral, thank you so much for engaging with all of those questions in a very delicate portfolio. So I'd like to draw us to a conclusion here and to a close. This concludes our concluding panel for the Manama Dialogue. But before I invite you to thank our speakers, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the host nation, the Kingdom of Bahrain, for their support and collaboration, without which an event of this scale and complexity would not be possible. We're extremely grateful to His Majesty the King and His Royal Highness the Crown Prince for their warm welcome here in the Kingdom, and to the multiple government departments and agencies deployed to ensure that this 21st ISS Manama Dialogue was convened successfully and safely. As I said on Friday evening, the ISS agenda is simple: foster dialogue, facilitate cooperation in the service of peace, security, stability and civilized relations among nations. And I hope that you will agree that we have made important steps in this direction over the past 2 days. As you might have noticed, over 700 delegates from 65 nations were involved here in this dialogue. 27 of them were young leaders from 9 countries who made a great effort to push forward our debate, and I'd like to thank them for it. We had over 3,500 people batched into this event to support it in its various ways. We had 28 full ministers participate, 24 intelligence heads, 11 deputy ministers, 7 national security advisors, 9 chiefs of defense, and the list continues. The IISS itself has facilitated over 103 bilateral meetings between nations, and then, of course, on top of that 103 go all of those bilateral and minilateral meetings that nations will have organized amongst themselves. 103 is just the ones that we were involved in. As of this morning, online, the ISS Manama Dialogue has already reached more than 7 million people through our various channels, and of course, no doubt that number will have only increased throughout the morning, when we had again 3 really interesting discussions. And I'm also grateful for our media delegates and the press pool that is participating here to transport the messages from the ISS Manama Dialogue into the world. And we had 25% more journalists here this year than we had in 2024. So that is encouraging as well. And with that, I'd like to thank you all for being here and for being delegates at this dialogue and for participating so actively in this conversation. That is why we're here, and I'm glad that you're embracing that spirit, and you have embraced that spirit over the last 2 days. Thank you very much. And now, before you go to lunch, I invite you to thank our 2 fantastic speakers. Thank you very much.
you.